showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Welcome, Salt Lake City, to episode 113 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am your host. I got a great show for you guys today, so hopefully you guys stay tuned and listen in. But I want to mention a few things really quickly. IamSaltLake.com is the website for the podcast. You can head on over there, find out more about me, find out more about the podcast. You can also check out all of the previous episodes right there on the website as well. So check it out if you haven't had a chance to. Really quickly, I of course want to mention the sponsor for this episode, Urban Lounge, located right in downtown Salt Lake City at 241 South, 500 East. Their website, theurbanloungeslc.com. You can find out about all the bands playing there. You can buy tickets. You can connect with them on Twitter and Facebook as well. This episode, really great conversation. Really great time I had with Chip and Jay from the Chip and Jay Show. You can find them at the chipandjayshow.com. A few weeks ago, I went over to their house and recorded. We had a podcasting marathon. They sat down, recorded their podcast with me. They interviewed me. And then after that was over, I set my podcasting gear up and had this conversation with them. So you're going to want to make sure to check out their podcast. Listen to episode 19. That's the episode that I was on. And I'm actually going to be on some upcoming episodes of their show as well. So you're going to want to make sure to subscribe to that podcast as well in iTunes. That way you don't miss a single episode of their show. So without any more rambling on my end, why don't you guys join me now as I talk to Chip and Jay from the Chip and Jay Show. We're doing a podcast marathon, more or less. I just did a recording for the Chip and Jay Show. So now I'm turning the tables onto them and going to interview them. So we've been sitting here for a little while podcasting. I got Chip and Jay. But why don't I just kind of have you guys kind of introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself, and what got you into podcasting.
Well, first of all, I'm not really comfortable with this turning of the table thing. That's not what we agreed upon.
Or were you guys going to interview me?
Then I was going to go to bed
again on my show.
Yeah. We decided to switch things up a little bit. We didn't really talk about this with you. We just kind of decided to go for it. Now we're just joking. Well,
which one is Chip and Jay? You know what? To be honest with you, I've sat here for an hour and a half, and I don't know who the hell you guys are.
I'm Chip.
I'm good to meet you.
I'm Jay. Good to meet you. It's very nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
What was your name again?
Chris.
Okay,
Chris.
Now we got it.
Chris Holyfield, right? Or?
We've already gone through this on your show.
It's so hard, man. I really need like a sign or something, or...
It says,
I know. It's Hollifield.
Holla at you, boy.
Yeah, we know.
No, so anyways, Chip and Jay Show. How the hell did it start? Let's start right there.
Oh, this guy across the table from me, Chip, actually, he's a man of many schemes. He's that guy that's always, man, I have this new idea. We're going to make so much money. And that necessarily wasn't the plan here. It was just more like, hey, this is going to be something that's really fun to do. But he's always coming up with just weird activities he wants to get into. And somehow, he's just a convincing guy. Always manages to get me on board. I just go along with him. I'm glad I did. I love doing it. One day he comes to me and he's like, hey, do you know what a podcast is? And I'd heard of him before. I'm familiar with him, but never really listened to him that much. I dabbled around with the Adam Carolla and stuff like that. I
think that's where most people start, is about Adam Carolla. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, what else is out there?
Well, he was the only one I really knew of that was big. And I'd looked on my iPad before just because I was curious, what there was to offer, but leaned more towards the video podcasts and didn't really get much out of it. So never really listened to him until we started doing a podcast, and then just kind of fell in love. And before, I would always listen to music 24/7, just as much as I possibly could throughout the day. And now I kind of have to find a balance between listening to music and podcasts and everything else. But so yeah, one day he just came up to me and said, let's start a podcast.
And how long ago was this? Just to kind of get a time frame.
How long ago was it?
It wasn't that long ago. I mean, maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah,
and
right around there.
I've heard a lot of people talk about that you've interviewed who have podcasts. I've known that I wanted to do this for a really long time and had been listening to podcasts for a really long time. Honestly, I hadn't known about podcasts for a really long time, but almost stumbled across them on accident because I'm the guy that always has to watch TV to fall asleep. Unfortunately, my wife, she works early in the morning, and at some point I finally felt like a dick, and I'm like, this is kind of mean, to have the TV up
10 years down the road.
Loud. Yeah, a couple of years down the road. So initially what I had been searching for was, all right, what can I listen to maybe in my earphones to fall asleep? It can't be music, has to be talking. And was trying to find like old archived episodes of Loveline. I'm like, I could just kind of zone out and listen to that. And then finding that, came across Adam Carolla's show, listened to that for a couple of weeks, and then finally talked to Jay. Yeah, you know what a podcast is? It's Adam Carolla. And at the time, I think Jay also was listening to maybe Bill Burr's podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Because I love Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I just love to talk. And I just said, dude, how cool would that be if we had a podcast? And it just kind of went from there.
That really, nuts and bolts, that's what this come down to is I really do like to talk as well, but not as much as this guy. He's the man that all of our friends know that if you're going to start a conversation with Chip, you better have some time you can set aside to do it. An example that's kind of funny is I was talking to him and driving somewhere down the road, and I drop my phone. It falls in between the crack in the seat, and I'm like, I'll just get it at the next stoplight. I'm sure he'll just hang up or something. And this is, good 2, maybe 3 minutes before I get to a light and stop, fumble around, find the phone, pick it up, and he's still going. Same conversation.
Oh yeah, I didn't skip
no idea.
So a big talker.
Big talker. So
you could.
So once I got the idea in my head and made the connection of, I could be on a podcast.
I can do that.
Yeah, I just knew I had to do it. So
what can people expect if they listen to the Chip and Jay show? Like what? Just a couple dudes talking? I mean, is there a premise of your show?
It's kind of has changed. I mean, a little bit since the beginning, and yeah, I mean, really, it's just two guys that we've been really good friends for a long time, and get along well and like to talk. I mean, so we'll try and have a show that's fun for the listener to tune in once a week for.
Hopefully, connect a little.
Hopefully, yeah, that's what we go for. We don't know if we do.
Have you noticed much? I mean, have you gotten much connection? I mean, like I noticed when I did your episode, you have emails coming in, listener feedback.
Which has been awesome, much more than we expected, I guess, initially.
Yeah, and it took a little while to get that going. I mean, we're only 20 episodes in right about now. At first, we were soliciting friends to do that and to get it going. The part you're talking about is the podcast potluck. So we'll have someone once a week send us in a submission.
Have you gotten more than one submission in a week?
Yeah.
A handful.
Yeah, so then you just bounce it to the next week kind of thing?
Or we just unfortunately can't use all of them.
Some of them
are probably stupid.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly, just stupid.
Yeah. Just not something that, you're going to be able to talk about for more than 30 seconds or just really weird off the wall stuff. We actually used one last week that wasn't even a question. It was just kind of a
statement.
Guy. I think he was in Kansas or something like that. Yeah. But just really wanted us to talk about his opinion and just to let other people know what his opinion on how much he disliked Halloween. Which actually turned out to be a really funny thing to talk about. But
was it my mom?
Yes, I forgot you even brought that up.
She said
have a lot in common because he was furious about Halloween and how America was supporting it, and he talked about
the horror costumes and haunted
houses. Yeah,
all of our favorite things. So
how did you guys even meet? Like, share that. I know that it's kind of bouncing back a little bit, maybe to the beginning questions, but share your story. I mean, did you guys go to college or high school together or college or anything? Or
no, actually, when I was 21, I worked with a gal who was friends with one of his longtime friends, a guy named Zach, that you guys have been friends for 15 years.
Probably, yeah.
And so I worked with his wife and then just kind of got invited to come and hang out. And Chip here has a really, really close group of friends that you guys have been friends for 10, 15 years. And I was kind of just adopted into the group. And me and Chip have just been good friends ever since.
So quite a while, you guys.
Yeah. And 5 years ago, I had a daughter. So, stopped going out as much, to parties and bars and things like that. And luckily, Jay has, kind of always shared, interests, like, we golf and I do the podcast now and, have similar interests that, he's kind of the guy I go and, kind of do these things with, in replace of, always going out to parties, things like that.
Yeah. And I buy into wacky ideas. I think a little bit more than anybody else would. So we've just got along real well.
Good to keep them around. Yeah.
So in the very beginning, what would you say the hardest part with getting the podcast going?
Oh man,
what was the toughest
so much
thing?
Different than we expected. I mean, I think really going into it, we thought this was going to be, maybe we'll spend a couple hours a week.
Oh, geez. Yeah, right.
We kind of thought too, we had no idea about hosting or anything like that. We thought it's like, we'll turn the iPad on and talk and it'll be awesome.
We thought iTunes was going to do everything.
Oh yeah,
we had no idea.
We thought,
no idea what we were getting into.
We press a button and all of a sudden, the podcast is up.
Up and someone does a website and we had
so where did you
idea.
So where did you go to learn? I mean, how, like, even
Google.
for people listening, just Googled it up.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, we started just like we talked about before the show with cell phones and like an iPad, and we would just record like driving places or like in a bedroom, and it was terrible, so we didn't put them up. And eventually, it kind of came down to, hey, is this something that we're actually going to do? And you always hear about people saying, if you're going to do a podcast, the best advice is just to do it. Don't try and start out perfect, because that's not going to work out for anybody, and it certainly didn't for us. But one day we said, you know what? Fuck it. We're gonna sit down, get the website figured out this hosting stuff. And we did. And we recorded an episode and put it up, and
and a lot of it's just been learning along the way, and kind of trying to figure out what, we want our show to look like. It is a couple of guys, but we also try to have, a little bit of structure to the show as well. We try to talk about maybe some recent things in the news that are funny. Also try to talk about maybe some funny experiences that are happening in our life. And, we try to go through the episode with a little bit of format because, there's a lot of podcasts out there and a lot are great. But, for me, when I just hear it's like a couple of buddies hanging out together and I don't feel like I connect with that and I don't, feel like I'm part of the group. Sometimes it's hard for me to listen long term to that. So we definitely try to have a little bit of structure, and it's been a learning experience for us. Just, hey, what does that look like for our show?
And I think for me, I mean, we wanted to make something that we would like to listen to ourselves. So we kind of, took bits and pieces from podcasts that we did like, and just something that we thought, hey, I listen to podcasts when I'm at work or getting ready or, taking the dog for a walk or whatever. What do I like to listen to when I'm doing that? Something that is kind of, lighthearted and kind of funny. And that's kind of what we go for.
And genuine.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we do pretty good at it. And we've definitely have kind of changed a little bit, but really just kind of try to stick to something that we want to listen to is the biggest thing that we focus on. And it's not going to work for everyone. Not everyone's going to like what we do, but that's fine. I think that, we've been, fairly successful with it so far. And I think we're just going to really just try and focus on not doing what we think that everyone else is going to like and try and please everybody, but just doing something that we're proud of and that we like to listen to. Because I actually, maybe this is conceited, but I really like to listen to our show.
Was it tough to listen to your own voice at first though? Because that was kind of tough for me at first.
Not for me
to listen when you're going back and editing it and cleaning it up, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't handle my voice.
I actually had a job before where I would have to record myself and listen to calls and stuff all the time. So I had quite a bit of experience with that.
Like a telemarketer.
It was collections.
You were one of those guys.
One of those guys. Yeah. Everyone's favorite
calling
person.
me up right now. Where's my
Actually,
money,
I
Chris?
meant to talk to you about that. You have a bill that you haven't paid for a
Outstanding
while.
balance.
Yeah.
You get that.
Do you have a card or something you want to put that on? Or no. I was really.
You pull out your little. Was that the Square app on your iPhone?
Yeah. I actually have this and swipe right there. We'll get that wrapped up for you.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of experience with it, so it wasn't really a weird thing for me to hear. But when I started in that job listening to myself, hated it. I think most people really don't like the sound of their own voice, so it takes a while to get used to it.
For me, the voice wasn't too difficult and painful, but
you probably love it.
Yeah.
Listen to that.
Oh, yeah, listen to this beautiful man speak.
He's sitting in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Keep talking, baby.
You have no idea how true that probably is.
But for me, the hard part is, I still struggle with this even today, right? Is when you're listening back and it's like, that joke was kind of dumb, or, I could have said this better or done that better. Something to where I'm like, the quality of this just, I don't love. That's the hard part for me, but I think it's also what helps us to continue to have a better show.
So do you think people need to spend a lot of money to get into podcasting? Do you think that's important, like sound wise? I mean, we've talked about sound. I mean, you guys have, just like even myself, progressed. Talk about even your setup a little bit of do you think you need to spend a ton of money to have good sound?
No, not at all. And again, really, I mean, if someone was looking to start a podcast, and we heard this from multiple different resources, from blogs and from other podcasts about podcasting, that the biggest thing is just to do it.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really think that's so true. Because if we had focused on, we got to have all the perfect equipment and have the perfect setup and get everything right, we never would have done it. And that's
there's these podcasting packages you get. $1,600. You get the top of the line microphone, the best mixer, and all this. And I think if you're starting out with that, and in episode 1, and you don't even know
how to use it,
if you're going to even enjoy doing it, after 5 episodes. I mean, obviously, what do they say about 7, 8, 9 episodes is like usually when people kind of fade out and keep going, and
or decide to stick with it.
Yeah, and even like your guys' self making it to episode 20, it's like, okay, you might be sticking with it a little while.
Hopefully, yeah.
And
no, I don't think at all that it's necessary to go out, especially like you said, because maybe it's not something that you're going to like, and you're going to have this, $500,000, $1,500 investment into stuff you're never going to use. And we've actually heard a handful of podcasts that have done exactly that. They went out and they went to Guitar Center and spent all this money and did 5 episodes and blew that.
And then they just have it collecting dust in their garage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we started with a Snowball, and we thought that was like, it was $60.
We're like, all right, I don't know about this investment. Yeah.
That's a lot of money for this. We did that for what, 8 episodes?
Maybe about 8,
right around there. And then decided, actually, because we had a guest that was coming in, it was our first
kind of a
guest.
funny story. Yeah.
Who was your first guest on the show?
Brian Pope.
Yeah,
Brian Pope.
Local comedian Brian Pope.
Did a great job. We love him. We're like, we can't have just the laptop and the Snowball mic.
Well, yeah, it's like you want to impress him.
You do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
That's how it was for me. I was like, gosh, I need this awesome setup.
So we feel like the word of mouth too, right? It gets around. We had this, fear, which, it's embarrassing to even say, but it's like, we don't want to have our first guest come on and then, he tells his buddies or whatever that are also comedians, it's Chip and Jay Buzzos, man. They had this little USB mic and we all had to sit around the table, So I think that there is an element of, you want the word of mouth to be good. It's like, hey, that was a cool experience.
Well, you guys impressed me when I came in here. I was impressed. I was like, well, you guys got your shit together.
Hey, thank you.
I was kind of jealous. You guys got a good setup.
The second mortgage, it's paying
we
off.
we did sell a few things to get all this shit. I will say that.
Oh yeah, there were definitely.
So what keeps you going week after week? I mean, if you've done 20 episodes, you do it weekly, right?
Yeah,
once a week.
It's a weekly podcast. What day of the week do you have like a
Wednesday evening? Every
Wednesday evening,
release,
people can expect a podcast. Mm-hmm. What keeps you producing? I mean, 20 weeks about you've been doing it, I guess would be fair to say.
I don't know for Chip. I mean, for me, it's just legitimately something that I enjoy to do. I really do look forward to. I think it's fun to meet new people like yourself, meet the big I Am Salt Lake guy.
Hello.
Which we've been listening to you for a while, so we're really excited to be
for
here.
at least a week. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. A couple episodes there.
Yeah, last night, we fired it up. And
I just wanted to do a little research. Yeah.
Now, I've been listening to you for a little bit now and really enjoyed it, but it's just something I like to do. It's really a lot of fun, and if you're thinking about doing it, I definitely say jump in and do it. You'll probably enjoy it. And if you don't,
well, I'd love to see more podcasts pop up here in the Salt Lake market, because I don't really look at it. Do you look at other podcasts as competition at all?
No.
I don't, because it's like the way I look at it is everybody has a different angle. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got a different voice. Everybody's got a different subject matter. And if we all work together, we can all, bring something to the table and help each other out. And that's why I'd love to see more podcasts here in Salt Lake City, Utah in general, I guess.
Yeah. I think Utah has a ton of creativity. I mean, we have such a great, our music scene, I think, is really good. We have a great, a lot of local comedians that are fantastic. Our art scene's great. So there's a lot of creative people here. So I think there's a ton of potential for people to have really great podcasts, not just, specifically for Salt Lake or about Utah, but just about anything in general.
About the subject matter in general.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think we should have a lot more Utah podcasts. And for me, I know of probably 10 right around there that I really enjoy. But
from Utah?
Maybe, yeah.
Really? I'll have to find out. What are some podcasts that you guys listen to, since we're talking about podcasts? Just in general, all around. I'm always looking for recommendations,
I'm a big fan of The Crab Feast. It's probably my favorite one right now.
It's fantastic.
Awesome.
What is that about? What is
you
said you haven't listened.
Yeah, no,
It's magical. It's great.
It's two comedians, Ryan Sickler and Jay Larson. And they're just really funny guys. And what they do is they get other comedians to come on as guests, and they just get the comedians and their friends, to really open up. And they come with just really bizarre, funny stories that they have from their past. And it's just a really good time. I also love the About Last Night podcast. With Adam Ray and Brad Williams.
That's another one I haven't listened to.
Those are definitely my two favorite.
You're out on a couple good ones, my friend. You have a lot of great hours of listening ahead of you.
And if you look too, right, these are both shows with two guys that are really close and have a good dynamic, which I think that's kind of what we strive for with our show as well. So I think to a degree, we kind of look at those shows and say, hey, that'd be great if we could get down as tight as these guys. So
for me, half the podcasts I listen to, I'm kind of a nerdy person, I guess you could say, are just technical podcasts about, being better as a podcaster, or just about, the equipment people use, or the hosting, or just, anything about podcasting is half of honestly what I listen to throughout the week. Besides that, I listen to your show. And again, not just because we're here in front of you, but I do like it.
Well, thank you. But did you find yourself interested in listening to like how-to podcasts because you do a podcast and you want to make it better? Is that kind of what led you?
Yeah.
Because you had no interest, obviously, before.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It wasn't just some weird hobby that I've had for years that I had no interest in doing a podcast.
But even audio, and you had no knowledge of audio
nothing.
or any of that.
We had to figure everything out. And actually the first expensive or not really expensive, but semi-expensive set of equipment we bought, total disaster.
It was horrible. It was worse than the USB mic. Yeah.
It was. What was it? What was that?
It was 2 AKG perception mics, which they're not terrible. They're just kind of tinny, and then a mixer. I can't even remember
USB mixer. Yeah.
USB mixer, and we had no idea how to use anything.
We had spent all this money on it,
and everything came together like the last second. So literally, before Brian was coming,
yeah, because we had the guests coming over that we were trying to impress. So
yeah,
we had no idea how to use
stuff together. It was a mess. But yeah, and that kind of stuff. I'm the type of person I really want to be able to know everything about what I'm doing and know all the ins and outs and find the best solution. So that's why I listen to them, and I just want to be able to
be the best at what you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And where it really, really works out is Jay and I are different in the sense that
polar opposites.
What we love about working on the podcast is completely separate, and he really loves all of the technical stuff with the audio equipment and how to put it up and just anything technical you can imagine. He just loves that stuff. Where that's not really my cup of tea, and I couldn't make it through 15 minutes of a how-to podcast where he can spend all the time and love listening to him, where I'll spend hours and hours and hours of listening to other podcasts that are similar to ours, that are amateur podcasts that, okay, what are they doing well and what are they not doing well, and things like that is research for what we could be doing better.
So what can I do better then? Since you probably sit and analyze and nitpick.
He's in the hot seat now.
Yeah.
Well,
let's get some feedback here.
I've heard a lot of talk about how you're the naked guy, and I feel that I would be Jay definitely would feel really comfortable if you would get naked.
Would that be that would be better? Make my guests more comfortable if I would
more
sit
comfortable if you were naked.
Yeah.
No, in all honesty, you're one of the few podcasts that aren't the huge Adam Carolla shows that really I have no constructive feedback, and I feel like you run a really tight operation with your podcast, and we inspire to nail things down like you do. So Jay takes care of all that stuff, and I don't have to worry about that. And I was always kind of a weird little creative kid, so I loved trying to come up with the subject matter and all of that stuff, and we just
thank God.
Yeah,
thank God. That's for us. That's why we're able to do this, is because our interests are different enough that one of us really enjoys me. I like to do the more technical stuff and figure out the website and the hosting and all of that, and he hates to do that. But I would hate to always have to deal with, finding stories and coming up with ideas of what to talk about. And so we just kind of both handle opposite sides of it, and it comes together well for us.
Yeah.
Do you guys share an email account, like a nice married couple? Because I still don't know who I was emailing.
Me, yeah.
Was that you? I was emailing when I was trying to set this up?
That's part of the other thing that I'll take care of is, I really enjoy reaching out and, kind of handling the interactions with the guests and stuff that we have. So I take care of that and, booking the guests to come on.
Who are some guests that you've had on? You mentioned Brian.
We've had Brian. We've also had a local comedian, Jamie Maxfield. He was a great time. As well, will be on our upcoming episode. And, the guest thing is kind of an interesting story. When we first started out, we didn't even have the idea of, we'll have guests come on the show, until a couple episodes in. We thought, hey, it might be kind of cool to every now and then, have a comic come on the show, and they can kind of, be funny and talk about the funny things that we're talking about with us. So, even at that point though, we're like, well, we don't really want this to be, an expectation that there's going to be a guest every week. We were trying to figure out what does that look like. And we initially thought, well, maybe once a month, maybe we'll have a guest on once a month and the other 3 episodes will just be, Jay and I. The cool thing now though, is we're finding ourselves in this dilemma where, comics have been reaching out to us asking, hey, I'd love to do your show. Which I guess we didn't really anticipate that at the beginning. So now we're kind of starting to relook at it and say, hey, how often do we want to have guests on? And
what was the toughest thing with the first time, besides impressing them, the first time you had somebody else on your show? What was the hardest part about bringing them into your circle?
Well, it's kind of just an interesting experience because, even like today, we've never hung out in the past, or we don't know each other outside of this. So it's, trying to develop rapport and be comfortable and be able to be yourself and be natural with someone that you've never been around. And I don't know if it's the same experience for you.
Oh, every time. I got somebody new every time on the podcast. So.
And we're having them come to the house, right? Because we record in a room in Jay's bachelor pad. So it's like, we have this stranger that we've never met, come to the house. And I think that initially we kind of had the, thought of, well, what if this guy's just like a dick? Or, what if he's just an asshole?
But you can kind of read it. You know what I mean? Honestly, you can kind of read who that person is through some messages.
Yeah, I think so. But you still, you don't know each other and it's kind of uncomfortable. But, so far we've had really great experiences with that. And,
that right there is something I really enjoy about it is you meet, and for you, especially you meet so many new people that really, you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to meet otherwise.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely kind of a challenge, is to build that rapport and be comfortable so you can have a good episode. Because if you're kind of awkward, they're going to be kind of awkward, and it's just not going to turn out well for anybody. But
it's helped me get out of my bubble a little bit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
In your own confidence levels and your own just hanging out with couple dudes, occasionally the girl would come on. I need to bring more female people on my podcast, I feel like. Well, would you guys like to have other people besides comedians? Who are some other people you would like to have come on your show?
We've talked about that, and I think definitely other people that have podcasts.
Obviously I'm not a comedian, so you had me on your show.
Kind of a comedian. He's a pretty funny guy. We've certainly talked about a few other ideas, maybe like local musicians.
Yeah.
It's still kind of a new thing for us.
Yeah, maybe, like I said, we can network around. We can share, you can have my sloppy seconds. And
that's why we're doing this. Actually, we're hoping to pick up some sloppy seconds.
Yeah, we're not, completely set on comedians, but, the format of our show is a little bit different, It's not just necessarily an interview show, but it's more so, hey, we'll spend 15 minutes interviewing the guest to try to get the listeners to know them a little bit better and to get them to open up a little. But then the remainder of the 45 minutes to an hour is, them just sitting back and having fun with the stuff that, we're talking about and adding their funny experiences or thoughts into it. So, comedians work great for that dynamic. And we have thought about musicians, things like that, but we also want to be careful that maybe we're not bringing someone on that wouldn't be able to jump into that format and joke around and have fun, Well,
you guys definitely have a great format. I enjoyed myself on your show.
Yeah,
hopefully I'd love to be invited back. I'd love to.
You will be.
To, play podcasting some more, fake talk radio, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
But, where would you like to see this podcast go? Like, do you have like any goals with it, end goals, or is it all just about having fun right now?
No, I mean, we certainly do have goals. Not necessarily. I don't think it started out as we're going to do this to have, something huge happen from it. It was just kind of, this seems like a fun thing to do, and we'll see where it goes. I think kind of as it's developed that we've thought, maybe if we could, somehow turn it into something where we could just do this for, a career, for a paycheck.
There's a lot of people doing it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think that's part of the thing that helps us to put in all of the hours of work each week is just that thought of, hey, look, we need to work really hard. And, we would like the podcast to evolve into something more, but we don't exactly even know what that is, right? But we just feel like, hey, if we work hard enough, that eventually, it could develop into something more. But we don't have any specifics on
you have to let it kind of mold into what it does become. That's one thing I've noticed with doing I Am Salt Lake is, when I started it, I didn't necessarily think it's going to be where it's at today, but it's kind of molded into what it is.
Sure.
If that makes sense. And you kind of have to go with, okay, who are my listeners? You know what I mean? And who's listening to the podcast more? The Salt Lake City hip hop community, amazing, with the I Am Salt Lake podcast. But, I'm not a huge hip hop person, but hey, you know what? I'll run with it,
Oh, yeah.
And have fun with it. So do you think podcasting will eventually take over mainstream radio? I like to nerd out a little bit with fellow podcasters with that, kind of dissolve that, turning on the radio dial.
I think that, I think radio is aware of that. And if you look at a lot of like even just Radio from Hell, for example, I've heard them kind of talk about that in the past. And, they have a podcast as well. And I think the nice thing about podcasting is it's on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I have to listen to this when it's being aired on the radio. Is you can listen to, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there when you want to. It's on your schedule.
And about a subject matter that you want to listen to.
Exactly, yeah.
There's a podcast about everything. That's what's crazy about it. I heard somewhere if there could be a magazine about it, there could be a podcast about it. Plus, it goes back to that of TV. When do we watch TV when that TV show is on anymore? We don't.
We watch it when we want to watch it, and we don't want to watch, commercials. And I think that maybe the satellite radio will stay around. I think there'll still be a niche for that. But yeah, I think just your standard radio, I think it's eventually going to fizzle out. Even myself, I don't listen to any music anymore. I just always have the podcast in, and I've turned into the guy too, right? Where you see the guy out grocery shopping with the earbuds in, and I always kind of saw that guy and thought like, oh, really? Like you got to be listening to music while you're shopping for
probably
milk,
listening to talk radio,
yeah, or whatever. And now I've
podcast.
turned into that guy where. No, any second that I have, if I'm at the store grocery shopping or driving to work or whatever the case may be, I have earbuds in and I'm listening to podcasts just hours and hours.
I've always been that guy at the grocery store with earbuds in. If you're going to be at Walmart, you need a distraction from that.
Yeah, but I think that, I feel like I'm not alone in that, and I feel that right now I feel that the podcasts it's very early.
No, it's in its infancy stage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Really. And that's what excites me with doing this show is it's like, gosh, I'm kind of still at the ground level of podcasts,
Yeah, it's like you're coming into a business.
And as generations go, because I still think that there's generations that have no understanding of podcasts. Even my dad, sometimes I'm like, man, should I have even told him about this? Right. Cause he doesn't get it. And it's just like the webcast, what are you doing there? You're hanging out with your webcast or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that there's still generations now that don't know about podcasts and don't understand it. But, as these generations move forward, I think that it's going to be the norm.
Does your family and friends, obviously besides yourself, do they ever get sick of you talking about podcasts? Because I find myself like, podcast this, podcast that. And it's like, gosh.
Because you want to share,
They must go get so sick of me saying the word podcast,
I think there's,
how many times can you say it in a sentence?
I think there's so many tiny milestones that really maybe aren't even milestones, but to you feel like milestones. When we had our first guest, that was just such a cool, we got our first guest on or whatever. And there's so many, little milestones that you want, to talk about it and you want, people to know about it. But I think that we've done a pretty good job at maybe recognizing that, hey, people aren't as interested in it as we are. And it maybe think, God, you guys ever going to shut the hell up about this? So I think we keep it to a minimum now.
Well, I think going back to even kind of your question, do you think podcasts are going to, get bigger, maybe take over radio. And kind of what you said, Chip, that not a lot of people are that familiar with them or maybe even understand what they are, kind of have a misconception. And I mean, perfect example. I didn't really listen to them that much before we started.
I didn't even know what they were until I was trying to find something to listen to so I didn't anger my wife, you know?
Yeah, so
now she's like, thank God for podcasts.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
she changed her life. She can sleep now. But I think a lot of our friends didn't even really understand what it was or what we were doing. And so I think that'll be a big part of, podcasting becoming a bigger thing. And I think, to go back to answer your question again, is that going to happen? I think just technology, when it's more readily available and easier for people to use in their car, outside of just streaming it from your phone through your car, if it's just as easy as turning on like a radio dial, I think that'll be a huge thing. And they're starting to put like Stitcher and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, aren't they integrating it? Like either I've heard it that the idea there, like, you pull your car into a garage and then it connects to your Wi-Fi and downloads your podcast or something. Yeah. I don't know. It's like there's so many crazy ideas that are still going to happen in the future, I think.
Yeah, and to Jay's point, and this is kind of a funny story, and I don't know if you've had a similar experience at all, but I think that so little is known about podcasts that, honestly, so we had this idea, right, to do the podcast, and we didn't tell anybody right off the gate. This again is kind of embarrassing, but we didn't run out and tell people, hey, we're going to do this podcast, because we were almost kind of like,
he didn't even tell his wife.
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at. Yeah,
we were a little while in before,
because it's kind of a.
Does your wife listen to your show now?
No,
yeah,
no. Her brother-in-law does, but she doesn't really listen to podcasts, and
she has. Sure, though, she might be listening.
I hope she doesn't, but
hopefully not.
No, I'm just kidding.
one of the recent episodes, he had to apologize to the wife for an opinion that he had and probably shouldn't have told her about.
Yeah, because she never would have listened anyway. But to go back to what I was saying, yeah, I mean, we were like, all right, we're not gonna tell anybody until we already have it up. And, maybe we can show some downloads and things like that. So it was almost just this little awkward secret, that we had. And, and funny enough, like Jay said, is I didn't tell my wife about it until, we had already actually done a few test runs. And finally at that point, I'm like, come on, this is weird. I had to tell her. So I told her, and, of course she was very supportive, but
probably more weird that
she thought it was strange that why are you not telling me about that, but again, I think it goes back to people, not everyone knows about podcasts and what they can be, and it kind of, you put yourself out there with having the podcast.
Absolutely.
And I think that was part of our initial thing of we wanted to play it close to the vest until we'd actually committed to doing it, and we were comfortable talking about it.
And what was her first reaction? You're like, honey, I have a podcast.
It was one of those kind of sheepish, where I'm like, huh, I got something funny to kind of tell you, and she kind of,
when I was going over it.
yeah. Well, so she
just thought you guys were having a little bromance.
Yeah. Well, she thought it was kind of funny that I hadn't told her, and we had been talking about it and preparing for it for a couple of weeks. But initially, after that, it was just like, yeah, it's really cool. I think you guys will do a great job at it, and it was super supportive. So
that's pretty much how it was telling friends as well. Just, hey, so we're doing a podcast now, and literally half of our friends that we told really didn't even know what a podcast was. So they were just confused about what we were talking about in the first place. We showed them the website and had them listen, and all of our friends have been super supportive. So that's
well, it's even like, my dad, right? What webcast? What's that? You just guys being dorks and, doing this you guys doing this gay webcast thing, so, people don't know.
So has that been the same for you? I mean, do you find that most people know what it is? Maybe you have
I call it online radio. It's like an online radio. I find people can relate to that a little bit better.
We should use that, yeah.
That would have made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think people understand that. But definitely, I think podcast is definitely still a new term to use, kind of like, oh, what is that? But I think more and more people, I know a lot of the newer iPhones are automatically coming with the podcast app already on there. So that makes people familiar with it a little bit. So they go to explore it. And again, that's what's great about more and more podcasts coming out there is maybe somebody finds the Adam Carollas or the Mark Marons. Oh, what else is out there? Okay, let's do a search for comedy. Let's do a search for Salt Lake City. And then boom, I Am Salt Lake. Chip and Jay show. That's who I'm talking. You guys are, Chip and Jay show.
I have so many guests. It's hard to keep them straight.
Yeah.
Who is it today?
I thought I was talking to a couple burlesque dancers,
I am City Weekly's.
We look a lot alike.
City Weekly's best new podcast. So
kind
of a big deal.
So yeah, I mean, I think, what I find has been, with this is just, trying to describe what it is, give them a few links, as easy as possible for people to listen to it. Boom, just click that play button on your laptop, and that's going to be, I do think podcasts sound better with headphones. I don't like listening to it.
I agree.
Through
I
like a
completely agree.
laptop or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how people do it.
Because you get that sound right in your ear. You know?
Yeah. There's something nice about that. Or I don't like Stitcher Radio. Are you guys on Stitcher?
Yeah.
We are on Stitcher.
Do you notice the quality just sounds like shit?
Yeah, it's definitely.
It's because they take it and then they compress it. And it just
because they just stream it, right? They don't.
Yeah. Well, no, they don't stream. They actually are hosting it from their their things.
See, again, that's technical. That's kind of up Jay's alley,
that's why the quality. But there are some of the bigger podcasts they just stream it, and I don't know if that's like a deal they get with that podcast or what. But
well, I think Stitcher they do it a little bit differently, but I think the iPhones, you mentioned like the app on there. I think really podcasts are what they are because of Apple right now.
Yeah.
Because they've had that app for a little while. And I think so many people eventually just said, what the hell is this? Why do I have a podcast app? Like, I don't even really know what these are for. And probably have that experience if they find Adam Carolla and like, oh, this is
what is
something
this?
I could get
what
behind.
Is this little, and I have like my Apple TV just syncs right up with the podcast.
Well, and there's just something for everyone too, right? I mean, there's so many podcasts that I listen to and that I love, but there's just so many more that, wouldn't be interesting to me, but are for so many other people. I mean, I read something about this extremely popular and successful podcast, which is basically, it was like a Lost podcast where just some people that were really passionate about the show Lost, had a weekly podcast where they talked about that. And I'm like, why would you ever listen to that or whatever? But
there's some Lost nerds out there.
But even, for me, even a show that I loved, right? So it could be, Sons of Anarchy podcast. And, I wouldn't be interested in listening to a couple guys just talk about that. But there's something for everyone. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of educational podcasts and how-to podcasts, and there's just something for everyone. And it's nice that you can pick and choose what you're going to listen to.
Do you want to start a Sons of Anarchy podcast?
Are you a fan?
Oh, no. Well, I'm a little bit behind, but. Wouldn't that be badass? Us three, we'll start a Sons of Anarchy podcast.
Yeah,
Let's do
we
it.
could do it.
Great.
And I won't listen to it, but we can do it.
You won't listen to it.
That idea just went down. No. I think that is the great things about podcasts is it doesn't matter what you like. I mean, you can find probably a handful of podcasts to choose from about whatever topic it is. And I think that's one of the big reasons that it's going to
take off, man. It's going to take off.
I think just as technology makes it more available, and really right now it is super available, but I think as it becomes just more and more easy to use, they'll blow up and definitely take over radio.
Now, did you guys grow up here in Salt Lake City, or what's your guys' story? Why do you live here in Salt Lake City?
We love. I don't know about you, but Chip, I love Salt Lake, and I think
what do you love about it? What do you love about Salt Lake?
A lot. I mean, the people here are great, and there's so much to do, especially if you like the outdoors. I mean, you can be in the mountains, or you can go down to the desert. I mean, you can go boating. There's a lot of really great outdoor activities to do. There's, like we talked about earlier, there's a really great art community. I like the local bands. I think a lot of people kind of get after, the Mormons on a lot of the laws that they impact, but I think that
they don't affect you day to day, though.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't really have a big effect, and I think we have a really clean city for the size of it.
Sometimes I forget that I live in such a religious dominant because it doesn't affect me.
Not at all.
I don't care. It's like so I can't buy liquor on Sunday. No big deal.
It really isn't, and it's so funny to hear people constantly, sound off about that. Well, you can't go to the liquor store on Sunday,
so buy it on Saturday.
So who cares, right?
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And for how many great things Salt Lake offers, I mean, for small things like that, a lot of people, especially when you're younger in high school, I think a lot of people would say, oh, I'm getting out of here. At least that was my experience. I never really understood it because I've always loved Salt Lake. I wasn't born here. I was born in Wyoming, but My family moved here when I was real young, so
you've spent many of you. What about you over there? Did you grow up here in Salt Lake?
I did. I also, though wasn't born here. I had been born in St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis boy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, so
that's why he has all the gang tattoos.
Those teardrop tattoos. Yeah. So we moved here as well, though, when I was very young, for my dad's work, and have basically been raised in Salt Lake. Anytime I've gone outside of Salt Lake to bigger cities, St. Louis or anywhere in California or Las Vegas, I'm always amazed at the litter and the trash that you come across during certain parts of your drive or whatever. And I'm like, wow, I take that for granted that there's really nowhere in Salt Lake that's littered with trash, or that there's going to be, a tire laying on the sidewalk. It's very clean, and the only thing I dislike about Utah would be the winter months and the snow.
I'm not a fan of the winter either.
Yeah, I don't snowboard or ski
I don't
or
do anything in this.
Anything. It just means I have to shovel. And
shovel, bundle up, warm your car up. Take 2 hours sometimes to get home from work, because it's blizzarding.
Yeah.
I think we have terrible drivers.
Ridiculous. Yeah. That would be...
Well, it's the guys in the huge trucks that are just, hey, I'm in a big truck. I can drive as fast as I want and not pay attention to the other cars on the road.
That would be my one problem. But nowhere's perfect. But I think that's really one of my only complaints with Utah is we have terrible drivers. But outside of that, I mean, we have a lot of great restaurants.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite places to eat? Because I always have to ask that on the show. Who recommendations of favorite places to eat?
I really like sushi. So Mikado, I think it has some really good sushi. My favorite sushi place, and it's bad because I can never remember the name, so it doesn't really make it seem like it's my favorite. But I think it's Teppanyaki. It's the one that's in the old church house.
I'm not familiar with that place.
Oh, it's fantastic.
There's so much good eating in this.
Oh, there's
area.
So many good choices. Yeah.
I knew you were going to ask this question, and I was just sweating bullets here waiting for it to come because, I'm really just kind of a boring suburban guy, and
like a Del Taco, Taco Bell.
I do love Applebee's. So
are you serious?
No, I mean,
you eat at Applebee's. Are you serious? You eat at Applebee's? I was just asking somebody last night. I said, why the hell would somebody eat at Applebee's? That food, it tastes like dog shit.
I went there yesterday and instantly regretted it. I walked in and
Applebee's?
I'm like, I don't know why we're here.
Are you serious?
No. I really don't.
Out of here.
I really don't eat at Applebee's. It was just the most, suburb generic, place I could think of.
Applebee's.
Dude, man, welcome to the neighborhood, That's their slogan.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just can't get over Applebee's.
No. Well, and again, honestly, I don't go out to eat often, and don't go as often as I should. But I'm a big fan of Mexican food, so there's been a handful of little Mexican joints that I've gone to that I really loved. Can't think of all the names.
How is the Applebee's Mexican?
I've never tried it there. Usually I just go with the chicken tenders. I'm just fucking kidding. I like Arby's.
Well, anyways, next question.
He's really taking advantage.
I'm just kidding. No, I can respect that. It gets expensive to go out to eat all the time.
I'm lazy.
I'm just the type of person I like to try new places, recommendations, and check it out. It's kind of become a highlight of the show for myself. To get new restaurant recommendations.
Well, that's why I said I was sweating. And I'm like, there's a place you may have never heard of, Taco Bell. I don't know if you've ever heard of the fourth meal, but
I'm quite the fan of the fourth meal. Anyways, but is there anything you would change about the area?
I don't know.
Tough one.
I don't know if there is. We didn't even mention this, but I think Jay made mention that the people just are friendly here. And my parents a couple of years ago had moved to Phoenix to do some work out there, and moved back after a year and had said, people don't talk to you when you're there. That you could go to a store, no one said, oh, hey, or, have a good day or anything like that. They said their neighbors, they never talked to their neighbors and never even acknowledged that they lived there. And, it was noticeable to them that, hey, in Salt Lake, people generally are friendly.
Yeah.
I love that because I'm that weird guy out in public that wants to go up and talk to everybody. And They're like, who are you? Why are you talking to me right now? But you can actually do that in Salt Lake, which I love. And
just be pleasant.
People are nice
man.
about it. Yeah.
That's the thing I like is just be pleasant, and you don't have to have intimate conversations with strangers, but just a friendly, friendly.
That's my favorite part.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
So. What I would change, like I already had mentioned, I hate the snow. So if we could somehow just figure out, maybe global warming, or I don't know how that works, but if we could figure out a way to just have, nice warm weather year round, that would be nice.
It's called California.
Well, yeah, but how do we change Utah to bring that here?
Yeah, we don't want to bring California here, man.
Well, the weather.
Well, the weather, not the people.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the people are migrating here. I migrated here,
You did, yeah.
Because that's where I was raised. Yeah, I don't think we talked about that.
We did. We talked about how you moved.
Anyways, yeah. So how can people find you? Online, let's run down the list. ATM PIN numbers, websites.
Now they can just jump on to it's www.thechipandjayshow.com and has links to everything. I mean, not all of like the directories that we're on, but it has 6 of like the main ones. And has Facebook and Twitter links, and that's the easiest way. Twitter, I think, is just at Chip and Jay Show.
At Chip and Jay Show, yeah.
And Facebook, I have no idea what it is, but there's a link.
You can find it on the website. If you search Chip and Jay Show, we'll pop right up.
Yeah, I always try to get all the links on the show notes and everything too. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap this up, or? I've had a hell of an evening with you guys. Double podcasting.
It's been fantastic.
We have as well, and thanks for reaching out and having us on your show and stopping by to our show, and we hope
hopefully
to do it again.
Our listeners kind of check each other out. I can't recommend you guys enough to go check out the Chip and Jay Show. Fantastic podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much, Chip and Jay, for coming on this episode of the podcast. Had a great time with you guys. Their website, thechipandjayshow.com. Head on over there and connect with their podcast. You can subscribe to their podcast. They're on iTunes and Stitcher Radio as well. Check it out. I was on episode 19, so you're going to want to make sure to listen to that episode. I'm going to be on some upcoming episodes of their podcast, so I'll keep you guys up to date on that, on what episodes that I'm on. If you're not following me on Twitter, you can find me there at I Am Salt Lake. We're on Facebook, I Am Salt Lake. Our voicemail line, 385-202-5926. Give me a call. Let me know what you think of any of these episodes. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about them. Also, if you haven't yet, feel free to leave an iTunes review. It takes just a few minutes of your time, helps out the show immensely, boosts our ratings, and I will love you guys forever. So that's going to do it. Episode 113. Hard to believe we've made it this far, but I'm enjoying it, and it's been a heck of a ride, and I've been meeting some really awesome people in Salt Lake City. I'm here Mondays and Thursdays, so you're going to want to make sure to catch me on Monday with a brand new episode. And until then, get out and enjoy the city, and we'll talk to you guys again very soon.